A shattered radio intercept crackles to life, fragments of static-laced voices whispering orders no one expected. Permission granted. Baseball game to commence behind wire. A photograph surfaces, blurry, grainy. A group of Japanese prisoners, their gaunt faces illuminated by late afternoon sun, clutching battered bats and worn gloves inside a barbed wire enclosure. The surreal image defies wartime logic. Enemy soldiers, disarmed and captive, allowed to engage in America's pastime mere yards from armed guards. How was this even possible? What unseen strategy lay beneath this seemingly benign concession? The story begins in early 1943, deep in the heart of a remote U.S. POW camp in California's Mojave Desert. The camp's commanding officer, a pragmatic man wary of unrest, approved the baseball games as a measure to reduce tensions and improve prisoner morale. A faded memo, yellowed with time, orders the construction of a makeshift diamond within the confines of the camp's perimeter. VOWAM rationale was simple on paper: keep prisoners occupied, minimize escape attempts, and present a humane facade to international observers. Yet beneath this gesture of goodwill, conflicting interests simmered. Military officials feared propaganda exploitation, while intelligence officers debated the psychological impact on captives. What was really hiding behind this illusion of trust? The playing field itself was a study in contradiction. The diamond measured barely 75 feet between bases, half the standard length, enclosed tightly within a rectangle of triple-layered barbed wire and watchtowers armed with .30 caliber machine guns. Prisoners wore patched uniforms, some with numbers crudely sewn on, others in tattered civilian clothes. Equipment was scarce: wooden bats chipped and scarred, balls patched with leather strips. Despite these limitations, the games unfolded with surprising intensity. The cracked earth bore silent witness to stolen moments of normalcy amid captivity. But how much did the camp's layout and surveillance truly allow freedom? Did the guards see more than just a game? The first recorded match took place on March 12, 1943, between two prisoner teams dubbed the Samurai Sluggers and the Rising Suns. The U.S. camp newspaper documented the event with cautious enthusiasm, noting the prisoners' skill and discipline. According to memoirs of a guard, the Japanese players displayed surprising teamwork and resilience, traits respected even by their captors. Yet the official reports glossed over a darker undercurrent: whispered conversations in dugouts, coded signals passed beneath the wire, and the subtle gathering of information. Was this baseball game merely a cover for clandestine communication? Why did the headquarters fail to notice the obvious signs? In response, camp authorities adapted quickly. New restrictions limited the number of players, introduced random searches of equipment, and mandated strict schedules. Guards received updated instructions emphasizing vigilance during games, wary of any subversive activity. Intelligence officers sifted through intercepted letters and interrogations, piecing together fragments hinting that baseball had become an unlikely vector for prisoner solidarity and subtle resistance. The sport, intended as a safety valve, morphed into a complex psychological battlefield. How did these countermeasures alter the fragile balance? Could a pastime become a tactical front? By late 1943, the baseball games had evolved into a ritual, a daily fixture in the prisoners' lives and a source of uneasy fascination for the guards. Yet beneath the routine, the camp faced a crisis: dwindling resources, rising tensions, and the looming threat of an escape attempt. A detailed map recovered from a guard's journal shows the diamond's proximity to a weak point in the fence, long suspected as a planned breach site. Protocols shifted, with intensified patrols and restricted game times. But the prisoners' resolve hardened. The game, once a simple morale booster, had become a symbol of endurance. How far could this fragile truce stretch? What was the true cost of allowing such a fragile freedom? Each episode is a document I pull from the dust of the archives. Share your own stories. Many of you have relatives who lived through that time, and your words help connect personal memory with archival evidence. Stay curious. Subscribe so you don't miss the next episode tomorrow. As winter of 1943 deepened, the baseball diamond transformed into a stage for subtle defiance. A faded photograph, uncovered in a forgotten box of camp memorabilia, captures a moment frozen in tension. A prisoner gripping a bat, eyes fixed not on the ball, but on a guard silhouette silhouetted against the watchtower's flickering floodlight. The air carried a brittle chill, mixed with dust and the faint scent of burnt wood from nearby campfires. Prisoners whispered in hushed tones about coded signals, embedded in the game's rhythm, bat cracks and base runs serving as messages to coordinate morale and perhaps something more. Could the game have been a silent codebook? Why did those overseeing the camp underestimate the prisoners' ingenuity? Behind the diamond, the camp's perimeter fence told a story of its own. A blueprint found in a recently declassified engineering report detailed the construction of the wire barriers. Triple-layered strands, electrified in sections, designed to dissuade any attempt at escape. Yet the report included notes on frequent, unexplained wire tampering in the area adjacent to the baseball field. Guards reported finding knotted ropes and sharpened stones hidden beneath the dirt near home plate. The conflicting purpose of the diamond, both a controlled outlet and a potential weak spot, remained a mystery to many. How could such a high-security environment tolerate an area repeatedly compromised without triggering alarm? What unseen negotiations or calculations guided this dangerous balance? In the months following, camp intelligence intercepted a fragment of a coded letter smuggled out by a prisoner, referencing the pitcher's stance and the catcher's signal in cryptic terms. Analysts posited that these phrases masked plans for coordinated actions or morale-boosting messages intended for fellow prisoners elsewhere. A weathered radio log from a guard station notes a sudden spike in communication traffic during game days. Transmissions, so brief and fragmented they defied standard encryption, but suggested a hidden dialogue. The camp's command structure wrestled with the impossible. A game designed to pacify had become a conduit for resistance. How deeply had this pastime penetrated the prisoners' network? Could the authorities truly control what was happening beyond the wire? A new directive arrived in early 1944, ordering a temporary halt to all games, citing security concerns and intelligence anomalies. The camp's daily routine shifted abruptly. The diamond was dismantled, wooden stakes uprooted, and bases buried beneath fresh earth. Yet a secret photograph in an officer's private album reveals a small group of prisoners clandestinely practicing hand signals and synchronized movements in the shadows of the empty field. The silence of the halted games spoke volumes. The prisoner's spirit had not been broken, but had evolved beyond the physical confines of the diamond. Was the cessation of games a victory for camp, security, or a trigger for more covert resistance? What was the true price of suppressing this fragile outlet? Despite the shutdown, whispers persisted in archived letters and guard diaries of informal matches played under moonlight, beyond the watchful eyes of patrols. One diary entry recounts a late-night game interrupted by a sudden flare of gunfire, a reminder that the boundary between sport and survival was perilously thin. The camp's psychological landscape had been irrevocably altered. Baseball was no longer just a game, but a battleground of wills, a fragile truce held together by cracked bats and whispered signals. How far could such an invisible front stretch before shattering? And what did it reveal about the human need for connection amid confinement? By spring 1944, the camp's atmosphere had grown taut, like the strings of a violin on the verge of snapping. Newly unearthed correspondence between the camp's intelligence officers reveals a growing concern. Prisoner baseball had become a nexus for coded exchanges, enabling coordinated resistance efforts beyond the camp's visible boundaries. An intercepted note, smudged with dirt and partially torn, references the 9th inning as a deadline for a planned event. The phrase's cryptic nature sent ripples through the command, prompting intensified surveillance and stricter controls. Yet, the Diamond's ghost lingered, its absence as palpable as its former presence, haunting the cracked concrete and barren earth where bases once stood. Could a game's memory wield such power to unsettle a whole camp? What unseen forces kept this fragile order from collapsing? A detailed map, drawn by an anonymous prisoner and confiscated during a search, depicted a labyrinth of tunnels beneath the camp, their entrances cleverly disguised near the former baseball field. The tunnels connected key points within the compound, suggesting a sophisticated escape plan meticulously coordinated through the baseball games' clandestine signals. The map's precision surprised camp engineers, who had long assumed the arid desert soil too hard to tunnel through effectively. The discovery raised urgent questions. Had the guards' focus on the Diamond's surface blinded them to the subterranean threat below? And what other dangers lurked, hidden just beneath the sand and wire? Meanwhile, an eyewitness account from a U.S. Navy pilot stationed nearby described routine reconnaissance flights over the camp, capturing grainy aerial photographs. One sequence, dated April 1944, shows small clusters of prisoners gathering near the old Diamond's location under cover of darkness, their formations shifting in patterns reminiscent of baseball plays. The pilot's report noted unusual radio silence on those nights, a stark contrast to the daytime chatter. The juxtaposition of leisure and covert assembly blurred the lines between prisoner recreation and military maneuver. Could these nocturnal gatherings have been rehearsals for something larger? What did the camp's leadership miss while watching the daylight games? In response, the camp's command issued a final ban on all prisoner assemblies outside strict supervision. New watchtowers were erected, their searchlights cutting through the desert night like blades. Guards trained to recognize subtle hand gestures and signals, with a manual circulated detailing how to decode basic baseball-related signs. Yet, prisoner memoirs hint at the ingenuity of those confined. Even under increased scrutiny, the language of baseball endured, evolving into a silent code woven into daily routines, meal lines, and work details. This persistent subversion challenged the very notion of control within the camp. How could a simple game transform into a resilient form of resistance? What did this say about the prisoners' unyielding spirit? As summer approached, tensions reached a breaking point. A hastily convened security report warned that the prisoners' use of baseball as a communication tool threatened to undermine camp stability altogether. The report recommended dispersing key suspects and increasing psychological pressure through isolation. Behind the cold official language lay a deeper unease, the realization that beneath barbed wire and watchful eyes, the prisoners had found a means to assert agency through a game meant to distract them. How far could this tenuous balance hold? And what invisible lines had been crossed in allowing the forbidden game to take root? In July 1944, a confidential directive circulated among camp officers, ordering the segregation of the most influential prisoners identified as key organizers of the baseball games. A worn ledger lists names alongside cryptic annotations: planner, signal leader, motivator. The segregation cells, cramped and shadowed, reeked of stale air and damp concrete. A guard's diary entry describes the eerie silence in the camp after the removals, the absence of familiar chants and bat cracks, leaving a void heavier than any physical barrier. Yet, even in isolation, these prisoners reportedly continued to orchestrate morale and resistance through coded messages passed during brief, monitored interactions. How could the spirit of the game survive such fragmentation? What unseen networks persisted beneath enforced separation? Meanwhile, a series of surveillance photos taken by camp snipers captured fleeting moments of prisoners exchanging subtle signals during work details. Finger taps, shifts in posture, glances timed to the rhythm of an unplayed game. The grainy images, annotated by intelligence analysts, revealed a complex choreography, a silent dialogue preserved despite the ban on gatherings. The surrounding desert sands bore faint impressions resembling base paths deliberately traced during night hours. These traces, invisible to daytime patrols, testified to an underground culture of resilience. Was the very landscape complicit in this quiet rebellion? Could a game's forgotten geometry offer prisoners a map to freedom? At the same time, a cryptic transmission intercepted by Allied codebreakers hinted at a broader network of POW camps exchanging information through similarly covert games. The message referenced innings and runs as terms for movements and supply drops, suggesting the baseball phenomenon extended beyond a single camp. This revelation unsettled military command, raising fears of coordinated uprisings or escape attempts. Yet official reports downplayed the threat, labeling it psychological warfare or mere prisoner ingenuity. Why would headquarters minimize such a significant intelligence find? What layers of deception were being maintained? In the final months of 1944, as the war's tides shifted, the camp's psychological grip tightened, but the prisoners' resolve remained unbroken. A faded sketch found in a prisoner's diary depicts a lone figure standing at home plate, bat raised in defiance, shadow stretching long beneath a barbed wire sky. The image captures the paradox of captivity, a symbol of freedom wielded within confinement. The diamond may have been dismantled, the games banned, but the essence of baseball persisted as a quiet act of rebellion, a shared language of hope and endurance. How do we measure the power of such a game? And what does its legacy tell us about the human spirit's capacity to resist, even behind barbed wire? In early 1945, as Allied forces advanced across the Pacific, the camp's atmosphere grew increasingly strained. A recently uncovered interrogation transcript reveals a prisoner's cryptic assertion. The game was more than pastime. It was code, spirit, and survival. Camp officials, pressed by higher command, intensified psychological tactics aimed at breaking prisoner cohesion. Yet, despite isolation and surveillance, the language of baseball endured, transforming into whispered memories and invisible rituals. A faded photograph from March 1945 shows a solitary baseball resting on cracked earth beneath a twisted strand of barbed wire, the silent witness to years of quiet defiance. How could a simple game transcend barbed wire and bullets to become a lifeline? What truths lie hidden in the dust and shadows of that forgotten diamond?